Well, hello there. Good morning. Well, it's morning here in the valleys of South Wales. It's about 20 past 10. And it is another grey, damp day. Low cloud or high misty fog hanging in the valley here. So yes, that's okay. It's not snowing. I'm not a fan of snow. I like to see it, but I don't like having to go out in it. But that's okay because I don't have to go out today unless I want to. And I witter. But before I do anything else today, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who has watched my videos, who has subscribed, who has left such beautiful comments. I am so grateful because I don't feel like I'm talking to myself anymore, which is lovely. And I just want to take the opportunity to wish you the very, very best of the blessings of this season. And I do mean this season because there's a whole host of celebrations of one kind or another in December into January, and I do wish you all the very best, not just for this time, but for every single day that lies ahead of each of you. That each day you can find moments of peace, of contentment, where you can express your creativity, where you have good memories to carry you forward, noticing the little things in life, the everyday little things that bring joy. For me, it's often my morning cup of tea is how I start the day off, and I'm always so grateful to that. Today it's chai again. I say again, it's chai. It's got some chai spices in it, and I love it. But it's those little everyday things, not the big things, that bring... The big things are important, but it's the everyday things that bring everyday value to life. And that includes being creative. And that's what I'm here to do. So I have here a piece of Canson Imagine paper. It's 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, so it's quite a big piece. And you know what my first job is going to be? Oh yes, it's time for some distress ink. And I am going to go with greens, I think, because, well, they go with this time of year just a bit, don't they? Well, they do. So I'm going to use some evergreen bough today to begin with. And I am going to get some on the blending brush, and I'm just going to try to add just a hint of colour. I don't want too much, I don't think, although moving my mug of tea out the way and the tin of distress inks here so that I've got some space to work without bashing things all the time. So I was saying, the best laid plans of mice and Angelas can go terribly awry, especially with distress inks, but they are so beautiful. And I think I'm using this one as the first sort of kinds of colour and foundation. And just going ahead with this one as well, because I think that'll be quite nice. There we go. And I am adding a bit more just around the outside areas. Again, if it gets a bit splotchy, I don't mind, because remember, I'm going to be drawing on top of this. Oh, I've got some fingerprints there, naughty me. And I've got some up here that isn't quite as dark. This patch there, it's not picking the colour up. I wonder if that's because that was where it was bound in the kind of book or whatever you call it that they come in. I think here I've picked the reverse side, but that's fine by me as well. So that's quite nice. That gives me a very subtle kind of background here. Now I do want to add some other colours to this, and I'm thinking more of a greeny yellow. So I'm going to use some shabby shutters. So I've used evergreen bough, not pine needles, it was evergreen bough. And this is shabby shutters, which is more of a yellowy green. It's actually quite a nice colour. It's quite warm rather than an acid green. That will just add a bit more, I was going to say flavour. That's not the right word. Oh dear, it's going to be one of those days. I didn't have a video yesterday because I tried twice to create something, and each time it went horribly wrong. And there seems to be a theme with me at the moment, but you know, often I say this, don't I? Things sometimes they are what they are, and I just have to accept that and, you know, work out what I'm going to do. So today's might be a bit different. I think what I was trying to do was to draw in a very structured kind of Zentangle kind of way, and really I think I'm much better at making use of Zentangle patterns in my own kind of way, in my own art style. So I've got in mind here, and this could be a longish video, you do know this, I'm warning you in advance, but hopefully if you wish to, you'll be able to draw along, and perhaps it will inspire you to have a go at doing something similar yourself. And although I'll most probably do this mostly in one session, I say mostly because I know me, is that I, you know, 5.5 inches is still a fair size to, you know, to colour in, to pattern in, but I'll try and draw a bit bigger than I would normally. I'll use an 05 pen most probably. So I have been drawing with 01 pens, which is never a very good idea, I do have to say. So that's quite nice as it is, but I do want to pop just a darker edge around it. So I'll pop my makeup brush back into its pot. Now then, do I want to use green? I think I will. I think I'm going to go, and this time I'm going to use pine needles. And I'm just dampening this piece of cut and dry foam up a little bit. I'm getting a lot of the ink off because I don't want it overly dark. I just want that darker edge that frames the whole card without having to worry about it, or the whole drawing. Creates that darker edge. Now I could, if I wanted to, use a paintbrush to splatter drops of sort of like gold ink or gold paint of one kind or another over this, or I could use a spray of water that's got some what do you call them, perfect pearls, or the cosmic shimmer iridescent micas, or there are so many that are similar out there. I could do that, but perhaps not today. Okay, I think I've got a plan for what I'm going to do. And what I'm also going to do is, if I'm working on, I'm going to try this again, because I'm learning how to do this, or rather I'm trying to remind myself what to do, is I'd rather like to stop the video if I'm going to be doing something that's quite repetitive and come back to it, so that I can, though it may take me a lot longer to draw this than it does you, to watch it, I think it could be a bit more interesting watching perhaps. Right, I have my 01 and 05 here. I have got an 03 at the standby as well, because that may prove useful. And I am going to draw a border in pencil lightly, because I have plans for a border. My head is ticking over this, and I'm not quite sure how well it's going to happen. But these kinds of rulers are jolly useful, because it's so easy to get an equidistant border. You just set these lines up against the paper, and as long as they sort of like are more or less evenly up against the edge of the paper, you've got a parallel line. It may not be exactly perfect if you were to measure it to the, you know, 1,000th of a millimetre or 10th of a millimetre or something, but for all intents and purposes it is on the small scale. So I've got that there, and I also I see my mind's going, shall I do something that is quite repeated around, or shall I do my usual kind of, so hard to decide. No, I am going to do my usual kind of thing, and today I think I'm going to start a little bit off centre, and I am going to get a piece of kitchen towel here so I don't pick up any distress ink, because it will be still slightly damp on here. But I think I'm going to start with a collection of circles, one in the centre, and then I'm going to pop the others around it like that. And then I think I may do another row, and the first lot I'm putting in between each of these circles, and then just going in and filling the gaps. I just find that you end up, I think, with a more even arrangement. It just helps me, and I can lose track of where I was going round, so that helps me not lose track of that particular thing. I am going to pop some leaves on here. Well, they're sort of leaves. I've got in mind a poinsettia, which is that plant that has these cluster of yellowish berries right in the middle. Well, they're not berries, they're actually the flowers, and then they've got these coloured leaves that come out that look like petals, but they're not, they're actually leaves. So I have that in mind. So I, by chance, put 3 arranged almost in a triangle, so I've popped others next to it. I do not know how many leaves circle the centre of a poinsettia, but I just think that will do nicely. And then I want a finer pen. Now I'm going to try this 01, but I'm wondering whether it's going to be, it'll be just fine enough, I think. I'm going to split the leaves in half, like so. And then I'm going to pop some veins in. I'm not going to take them right up to the edge. I'm going to use them as a repeated pattern. Which works well enough for me. So on the bigger leaves I'm putting 2 of these V shapes in, and on the smaller ones just 1 of them. There are places where I've missed, like here, but that's fine. Missed the centre, as it were, it's fine. So that's 1, and you know me, I'm going to do another 2. So I'll be back when I've done that. So there we are, 3 of them done. So now I've got to decide what I put around them, and I am tempted to put, oh gosh, shall I put a ribbon in? Nope, I don't want a ribbon, but I do want some things that will come out of here, because this space is a bit jaggedy and everything else. I could put an aura around it, but that wouldn't feel right. So I'm going to have everybody's favourite, or most people's favourite, it seems, some muka coming out, and I can fill in some areas with black then as well. Where I get tiny spaces, which will be quite nice, and I think that would look rather interestingly nice and just help, I think, to give a different kind of edge around all of this. And if I do it carefully enough, I may be able to get an edge that is nice to work up against as well. So I'm turning my paper around today because it is the easiest way to get these. Now, that was a wobbly line, but by filling this little gap here with some black, I've been able to correct it. And where these join, I do like to add some extra black. Makes it look a bit like stained glass then. So, do one more. So the way I'm drawing these is I'm drawing this with a almost completing loop, then I'm spiraling it up and I'm going up further than you may think, or towards the top of this circle, and in the end I'm just giving it that black teardrop shape, which I quite like. It looks like there's something curled around upon itself, like a fern getting ready to, getting ready to open. Quite like that. Let's just do this, and then I'll finish this and I'll come back then. So see you in a moment. So there we are. That's the muka finished, I think. Some of these places were just a bit too small to pop anything else in, so I filled them in black. Well, I think they're a bit too small, but I think in these larger areas I'm going to fill them with lots of little circles, I think. Though in hindsight, I think perhaps I should have done something different because this is too similar to the centre of the flowers. But I think that will get sorted out in time as shadowing or colour is added. So it'll be fine. And I think as I'm varying the size of the little circles, it'll work fine. I just think that having very large areas of black just would look a bit clumsy and clunky here. Well, clumsy and clunky I think means the same thing, doesn't it? Yeah. Mouth working, brain not engaged. Well, brain is focusing on the drawing. So I'll stick with this with you because it won't take me too much longer to do. It takes me a bit longer to tidy up or to draw the muka, and I'm just tidying up little areas of a bit of sloppy line here and there as I spot them. Should be fine. So I've got this little bit left to do and then this big area here, and we'll have a look. And while I'm doing this, I'm thinking about what comes next, or it's not actively thinking, shall I do this, shall I do that, shall I do whatever. I'm just allowing an idea to sort of like bubble up into my conscious from my store of motifs and patterns in my head. But failing anything popping up, I shall reach for my visual dictionary, sketchbook, reference book, diary, journal, Zibaldoni, which is a place that I store interesting patterns and motifs for future reference, all in one place, rather than on individual artwork. So if something arises that I particularly like, as things can do by accident, then I don't know why I'm turning it, because this should work any way up you like. But I've got then that there as a reference to look into for inspiration. So those are all quite nice. I think so. So I've got these poinsettia. I think I'm going to work on this corner over here. And I'm trying to think what I'd like to put here. Just tidy that. Oh gosh, that was a clumsy tidy up. It's fine though. I'm not entirely sure, so I shall reach for this is one of my visual dictionaries. It's just a dot grid notebook, and I have got tons and tons of all kinds of patterns and motifs in here, down to the cute and cuddly, very abstract botanicals, my favourite patterns, flowers, and all sorts. All kinds of things, fish, under the water, crystals. And this one is not far off full. I did start a new one. Actually, there's plenty of space still in here for more. But things like this, where I suddenly just see some, I think, oh, I really like that. And I'll pop it down, and the same here with all of these. If you've been watching my videos of exploring patterns, you can see where some of these have come from. So I look in here and I go, oh, that's interesting, let's use that. And I've got others here. But yeah, I think that's what I might do, is use some of my favourite kinds of patterns that may not be wintry or Christmassy or in any way, shape or form, but these are things that I like to include simply because I can. Add another one like that, I think. Put a ledge underneath this. So what I'm doing here really is creating almost like blocks of bricks, I suppose, support. But I also put them in as a kind of motify kind of thing as well. So I've got one there. And I am going to pop another one in there. And I'm going to thicken the lines to give to mess with dimension and to give a three-dimensional kind of feeling to things. So I'm going to pop looks like a ring in there. And how I've put the shadows here, or the thicker lines, is what will help to create that illusion of, it's almost like steps going up and then there's a dip here, and that can be brought out then even more with shadow or colour. It's a bit of a clunky edge there, so I'm just going to change that. This big one here is ripe for some kind of pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put two fine inner lines there, and then I can add some pattern. Like that. So that's quite nice. It's quite a nice contrast to the very organic scent, part here. And that is roughly a third in and a third down-ish. So it's, if you divide whatever shape you're working on into thirds, then where these third lines cross over is a good place to put a focal point. So this is my focal point here, so I don't want to, you could put another focal point elsewhere because that can work, but really I want everything else to be to form part of the background rather than to be that important. It doesn't mean that I can't get intricate and ornate. If anything, the more intricate and more ornate, the more like a background pattern it is, but I can still put interest in it in there. So I am going to pop another couple here. And at the top, I'm deciding what to do here. Put a narrower in there. And I am using very thick lines. Again, it's that contrast. And I'm going to thicken the lines around the mucas as well to separate them from this very much so. So that gives a bit of, it's kind of an aura, but it's not an aura. So let me have a look. So I'm going, I don't know what possessed me to make this kind of shape, but I have. And that's fine because you work with it, or I do. I just felt the right kind of thing to do here. And here there's enough space for me just to pop another little circle in, as there is there. And that mostly keeps the edges nice and straight. They're never going to be perfectly straight, but they work well enough. So that's an interesting kind of shape here. So what can I do with that? I think I can add some lines in, curved lines, and perhaps make this into something quite curvy, which will be quite nice. And I'm going to use the thicker pen again because I'm just going to fill these in and put a highlight in the middle of these black lines just by leaving it plain. At a later point I may desire, or I may not, to add white to that, to add a highlight, but as it is, that'll do nicely. The interesting thing is, I think I'm going to put another one in the other side. Why? Oh, essentially because I can. But it leads to an interesting arrangement, or an interesting arrangement of shapes, possibly. You may agree, you may disagree. But part of me is thinking now that I really ought to perhaps have started with a smaller tile. And that's always possible. Here, it's a bit like Muka, but I'm putting a spiral going right the way round, and then the stem going like this. And again, I am adding these curvy pieces of black, or filling in black, just to add that sense of connection. So it's almost like stained glass. Yeah, let's keep going. Another one of those, and perhaps this time with a square in the middle, has a circle in it. So a thick line at the top will suggest there's a hole going inwards. Thicker lines, in my instance, to the left and the bottom, make this bit here sticking up. If I want this to stick down, then I need to put shadows to the top and the right. And then this one I'd like to appear to be sticking up this edge, so I'm doing the thicker lines to the left and the bottom, and that just adds this here. And go back to this, and I'm just going to make the lines on one edge of the leaf. In this case I'm mostly sticking to the left and the bottom, so if I can't get to a left I go to a bottom, as it were, just to help to separate these and to define them against the background. It helps them to stick out. Shadow would do that, but I just feel it needs a bit more. And this is very typical of things that I enjoy doing in my more personal art, which is what this is. I'm having a break from colouring book art mostly for a little while. I do have some work to do on Adorable Dogs. I've got to complete the do the coloured templates over the next week or so, which I will do. Now that just helps to lift those up as well. The thick line adds shadow, which then can be enhanced with the use of graphite or colours or whatever else. Okay, so far okay. Up here I've got a big gap here, so I am going to do the same as I've done here. I'm going to fill this one in with some of these tiny little circles, tipple I believe it's called in Zentangle speak. This one is actually looking almost like fish scales or dinosaur skin, reptile skin to my mind under there, but that works nicely. And yeah, that's beginning to look really nice. I will fill that one in with black though. And there's a lot of black, a lot of contrast here, and I don't want to use too much black in some ways, but at the same time I know I need to do this. This area here, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I may just leave it as it is because it's quite an interesting egg shape on the edge. I know what I can do, or what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the fine pen. I'm just going to put really close together lines here that go up to the pencil line. If they miss the line a little bit, that's fine. And I am leaving a little gap between them. Sometimes with a dot, depending on the length of the lines. So where the lines are longer, I can put that dot in. But it adds that highlight that gives that feeling that something is perhaps a little shiny underneath. It adds a bit of texture. I'm not going to draw a line across the top there. I'm going to just leave it because your mind will put it in. Now I could carry these blocks on down here, but I'm not going to because I want to I don't want to have that feeling of too much blocking, so I want to add something here, and I'm trying to think what I'd like to add. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a leaf pattern. So you start with an S shape, one that goes the other way, and then a little point like that. And it ends up looking a bit like an ivy leaf, which does fit in rather nicely with this. Ivy leaves have got 3 points, but it's like one is hidden away somewhere. And this does make quite a lovely kind of pattern, so that'll be quite nice there. if I round that off, that looks like the bottom of the leaf. I'll put a little circle there for a berry. And in each case with these berries, I'm going to put a little dot in them just to help with that suggestion they may be berries. And again, I am going to, so these central parts, they go from the point down to the bottom or the other way round, and then I curve out from the bottom to the point of that little leaf, so they extend from the same place. I am going to do another one here, and I am going from the centre of the berry because it does give me a little bit of room, if I wish it, for any more of these, because I could fit some more in here, which is what I may very well do. Now this leaf would finish down here, so I'm going to imagine this point coming from there, and I think I can squeeze another one in here if I go like this. I could have popped that shape on the other side, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave it there, and it looks like these are hidden underneath the muka that way. And then to make sure that I suggest there's one of these smaller points to one side, I am going to pop that vein in there, so it's got the same kind of pattern as the others. And I'm also going to pop one in here. But here I'm going to put that little vein, or that little leaflet quite high up. Not leaflet, the points, so I can add that in. So that works quite nicely. Actually, I really quite like that. It's really quite lovely. I can't remember the name of it. It is a Zentangle pattern. I know you'd find it on tanglepatterns.com under the leaves. Is it Eek? No, it's not Eek. Eef. I don't know. I can't remember. And I know I don't. I'm almost positive I haven't got it written down anywhere. Now I am going to go back to these and just pop some more of these in between. I think I'll have them coming down towards the edge here as a point, just towards the corner. It's a very squished berry there, but I can live with that, and I think it's a very stylized kind of shape there, but it'll work. Long and stretched, so let's have a look. There we go. So that's all quite nice there, and I'm going to pop berry in there. I'm going to go back and curve some of these and weight them. And I'm going to have a quick look and see whether I want to add any more of these. I'm tempted, if I put one here, I'm going to have to fill it in. So I think it's okay as it is, because I think whatever else I do will just fit in there quite nicely. So that's okay. And of course, we've got poinsettia, we've got ivy, and if I'm going to be doing something to do with winter, Yuletide, Christmassy kinds of things, I think we're going to need some holly. So I've just put here a cluster of 3 like orbs, sort of like imperfect circles. I'm going to put the dots on to make them appear as if they are berries, and I am going to draw some lines in for where I'd like the leaves to be. Start with these on this side, And then I'm just going to draw. Lovely thing about holly leaves is they're not as perfect in shape as you think they are. They have lots of different size lengths on their points. So that's a very strange one there, but it'll be fine. And that one is, but they'll be fine, they'll work. These are angular styles, so really I should have started from the point because it's a lot easier to do them that way. And I think I'm going to be able to squish some in between them. And that'll be all right there. And here the same. And down, and that'll be fine. So I've got some holly there. And for this, I am going to just very quickly draw in the veins that go here. So that will also help to separate these out and will hopefully help me adjust the shape of the very weird shaped leaves, the ends, a bit, or help to give them that more of a feeling that they may be leaves that are warped and bent in wonderful ways. Because that's what holly leaves do on around the points. They do bend and warp somewhat. Ah, that's interesting there. So I can fill this in with black. That works nicely. That helps hugely, I think, with the shape of the leaf. There we go. So I've got those there. I've got this area here to fill in. And I think I'm going to do that with, I could use these blocks again, and I am just going to pop, almost like there's a hint of a block behind there. And I am also going to do some blockery down here. Because I just think that will really seriously help with all of this. There we go. So yeah, some blockery. It's like trickery, but it's blockery. Well, not broccoli, blockery. Some blocks. Broccoli. Definitely not broccoli. I want to eat this. Well, those. So there we are. So that's beginning to work. Okie dokes, next. These leaves, I again want to thicken some lines. To add that feeling of shadow. And also some thickness to the leaf. It gives them almost a sense of volume without adding any other lines. Almost. There we go. And then here as well. Quite nice. Messed this line a little bit, but that's okay. Can become part of it. So that helps to separate those out. And I'm going to do the same with these hollies as well. So it's underneath and to the left. So that's pointing to the right, but there is a bit here that goes and it is an underneath. Fill that little area in, and that one, perhaps a bit here as well. These lines get a little bit on the thick side. I'm not worried. It ends up looking a lot more like, well, I say stained glass windows. It has that feeling of a lino cut or a woodcut print as well, where you have these very bold lines and very fine lines. But that's beginning to work. Okay. What else can I do? You know I love arches. Well, if you're familiar with my work, you know I do love to pop arches in. There is just something so beautiful about a rounded arch. Pointed arches are nice, as in Gothic arches. Tudor ones are interesting because they have a sort of like an almost flat round with a little point on the top. But I am going with nicely rounded, and I'm going to use my pencil again here because I want to draw some guidelines within this, because I am going to put a pattern between these lines, and I want the lines to disappear, and I'm going to use a zigzag. When I erase the lines, your eye will, once I've put something inside each of these open triangles on each side, your eye will assume there's a line there in some way or another. So to do that, I'm going to draw a triangle in, and I'll zoom in. You can see the triangle, and then I'm going to curve in and pop a V shape going up. So I'll do that again on the other side. And I'm trying to keep them within those lines. And I do find it a lot easier to draw the outer V in first, rather than try and draw the top bit first. I'm sure there are people who find it easier to do it the other way round to me. And then I'll turn my paper. Oh, there'll be one there. I'll just put the point in. And it's exactly the same on the other side. And by turning my paper, it makes it a lot easier to work out how to draw this. I would, if it was in my sketchbook, or another piece of work, I'd do it the same way up. As usually working an A4 sketchbook more than anything, or not A4 paper, and it's a complete and total pain to have to twist and turn that paper. So there we are. So there's a lovely arch there, and that's really nice because it could almost be a ribbon as well if you wish. Well, where one arch goes, I need another one. So not necessarily there, but I think I could have one, perhaps a series of them, peeking out from the holly. And for this one, I think I'm going to I'll divide that in two. And instead of using straight lines here, I'm using curved lines, straight down the middle, but then from top to bottom of the arch, I'm using curved lines here because I do want to give perhaps a bit of feeling of volume, or that this is curving away. And although it gets wide to the end, it's best not to ask. Now I could fill these in just in black, but I'm not going to do a Knightsbridge. I'm going to have a look at this and see whether I like it this way. I am wondering whether to do the other side or whether to repeat this on each one. I think I'll do the other side, but instead of doing it in the same direction, I'm going to do it like this. And I am going to add a little bit of a curve to these lines, because that curve will give a feeling of dimension as well here. So there we are. So that's something a bit different. So instead of just colouring it in like you would with a traditional Knightsbridge, I just did something a little bit different, which is fun. Okie dokes. I said I was going to do some other, I was thinking about doing some other arches because I do like layers of them. So here's another one, and I am going to, I'll leave them as they are for a moment. This one, I think it's going to need a pattern that is perhaps a little bit more dense than in tone than others. So I'm going to do the curvier version of Shattuck, but I'm going to add a darker tip to these sort of triangle shapes that are here. And I am adding a break in the lines that form the widest part of this shape, just to add that interest and literally just to break the lines and the space up. It adds a bit more lightness to them, so it makes this feel like it's not as dark and dense, which it wouldn't be, but I think if I had solid lines there wouldn't be as much contrast between this lined area and the black bit. The first line is always a solid one. So bear with me while I do this. So I think if I turned it off, went away and did this and came back, I wouldn't save that much time really. There we go. So that makes a nice contrast to the lighter, more open pattern there. And I am going to sneak another little one in here, I think. Just a little one as well. Got a tiny gap there. And I'm just going to fill this in with little lines because I can. And because there's not much space for anything else, and I don't want black there, but the lines will add some sense of shadow without overwhelming us with black. So that's quite nice. I quite like that. I like that quite as just as it is. And this is my problem. Do I leave this way? And I think I may, because I can get sort of like delineate these shapes with the shadow that, you know, we've talked about, using. But what I think I will do here is I am going to add perhaps just one more arch here, perhaps, and perhaps a narrower one here. Let me just tidy that up. It's going to be a heck of a long video, you know that, don't you? Okay, so I want to pop some patterns in these. I think I'm going to do, this is one of my favourite ones. I have these lovely little curved arches, arches within an arch. It's just lovely. They look like teeth actually that way, like a big smiley grimacing face, but they're not. They're meant to be little arches, and they look less like teeth when I've done that, and they'll look more like little arches when I put some shadow on the left hand side. There we go. So instantly no longer teeth, little arches. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one, but I want the arches pointing towards them, so I'm going to turn that round. I'll zoom in this time so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to, where there's an awkward shaped edge, I often start the arch from that corner, and that's made a complete arch there. Actually, those look like teeth with gums, don't they? I'm just going to fill these bits in with black. Narrow the arches as the lines I've just put in, as the border gets narrower, and that will naturally happen anyway because the arches will get shorter in height. I say arches. Then pop these in. And then I'm going to put some shadow on this side, which is the right hand side because I'm upside down. Okay. Fill that one in black completely. So that's quite nice as well. It's got a nice contrast. Do you know what I haven't got in here? I haven't got any mistletoe. And I do love mistletoe. So I think I'm going to pop some mistletoe. Just going to pop some in here because I think in here it'll work nicely because I can have the stem coming down. I can pop one berry in, another berry behind. For some reason I always draw just 2 berries on mistletoe, and then you've got these teardrop shapes as the leaves, which will work in a very nice and very stylized kind of way. There we are. And again, I'm going to go in and make the line to the left thicker, hopefully equally thick along. Oh yeah, this is where my Tombow Fudena Suki pen would be very useful for drawing all of these. I'm going to do the same with the berries and add, make the line thicker, make it weightier there, and then with a fine pen I'm going to add some veins and texture. This one may need to go, if I lengthen it just a little bit, that's a bit nicer. I'm going to do the same here, and again, and this one I think I can just take a 5th one in there, and then that just adds shadow, and that's quite nice. And I think that works. If I put one, I could put one here, but I think this space was an odd shape, that I like the space that's there. That one, it looks quite nice. So I have got some mistletoe in. So I think this is done. Well, the drawing's done. Zoom out again for you. So I think the drawing's done. what I am going to do is from where I'm going to dangle a little bead, and I'm going to put my initials in there. And that'll be quite nice. So I have that, and I think that works quite nicely, to be honest. I've managed to make everything all skew whiff here this morning, nudging things around. That's quite nice. Okay, now I get to wreck it. It's time for shadow and highlights. So yeah, let me get a graphite pen. So I want a decent tortillon or paper stump, so let's have a look here. What have I got? I'm going to come on out, you can. Pain in the butt. That'd be nice. I've got a paper stump rather than a tortillon here, and then I'm going to look at where there's going to be shadow. But before I do this, something very important, hopefully I can find it. I need to erase the pencil lines that are already here. I may not be able to do that because of distress ink, but if I can get as much of them off as I can, that'll be great. See, the way to make them disappear would be to draw over them, but I don't want to do that. I think that it was just the outlines, and it was just that one there. So that'll do. Okay. So I've got a 2B matte graphite here, and I'm just going to add shadow in some places with this, hopefully. I usually use the 6B and it gives quite a dark shadow, but I'm hoping that I was using this on some Bristol board yesterday, drawing, and it really doesn't blend out well on Bristol board. Just letting you know, in case you ever decide to use Bristol board. Bristol board is a very, very smooth kind of paper. It's very thick paper art paper, and surface, often used for airbrushing, but it's beautiful to draw on with pens because it is so smooth. It's happy to be coloured with distress inks, though they can be a bit patchy on it. That does vary from brand to brand because they're all slightly different, but they're not happy for pencil and blending at all. This is actually working okay, so I'll be able to get a decent amount of shadow. If I want it darker, I can always go back and add a bit more, so I'd want it darker in these nooks and crannies. So that'll work nicely. There we go. So that's looking okay. Right, where else? I want some in here, definitely. Quite a bit in there. And around here, because I haven't added anything underneath the holly. Filled it in with tipple or anything here. Kept that for just some parts around here, really. Now, the advantage of doing this on the mixed media paper is if I add too much or I spread it where I don't want it, it's going to be easy-ish to actually erase it. I'll use an eraser just to pick some of it up. That actually works quite nicely. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to there and there. I've got some here that I want. Under here there would be some to that side. Under here, under there. So don't forget, Angela, you've got to go where these leaves overlap. Around the berries and where the berries overlap one another. Some there. have some there and some there, I think, and a little bit there. Just there and around there, that would be great. Fab. Lovely there. Get that shadow where these would overlap is great. This is how it really helps to bring things into, to give that dimension that is needed, the layering, bring layers out. The nice thing is with the graphite is that you can tease it out into the shapes you want, and if you make a mistake, as long as you haven't overworked it, you should be able to pick some of it up. It's like I've got a very odd shape here, and I'm not fussed on what's happened there, so I can just go back and remove some of it where I'm not happy. Actually haven't worked this one in. Can do that now. Okie doke, so there's that. Okay, under my mistletoe, there's going to be quite a bit of shade under there, under here, around the berries, I think. Perhaps just a little bit at the top, and of course not forgetting the berries themselves and where they meet. Come back and think about if I want to put any shadow on the leaves. Just fade this out. So that's looking okay. Right, these leaves I'm going to pop shadow underneath. I've done it over there, but I'm going to do it there, and I also need to look at where they're overlapped by other items as well. So let me get the ivy leaves here sorted before I do anything else. So I am going to put shadow where. So I'm going to go outside of the border here with these, but that'll be okay because they do stick out a bit outside the border. Putting shadow where these would be, and there, because that would be there, and there, and there. So let's have a look at blending this lot out, is it? Very gently. Going to pull some of this down so I've got a bit more shadow underneath. How are we doing? I think I need some there. And that's beginning to work, isn't it? I think so. Possibly. Is this misbehaving itself in terms of focus? Possibly. Especially as I've moved the camera, so. Right, okay. So with the poinsettia, I want some shading, some shadow around the centre where the leaves overlap. Lower leaves underneath there. Where there's black behind, I'm not going to add any shading because this will lighten the black. Because it's a pale grey and it's relatively opaque, and even though it's a matte graphite, there's still a bit of shine with it, but nowhere near as much as ordinary graphite pencils, that's for sure. So going to add some around these bits in the middle while I think about it. Make sure I do that. There, around there, that'll be fine. Overlaps there, under there, there. Okie dokes, let's get to that then. So I'm doing one kind of motif at a time so I don't get confused. So I'm doing all of the poinsettia and where it all overlaps. Oh, see, I need some down here. That'll be fine. Because I can then come back and deal with the next lot, which must probably be Muka. So I'm getting close to getting this done now. It is worth spending time on, but I find if I spend too much time fiddling and fussing, I end up with way too much grey everywhere, which is an issue in one place here, I've already seen. But that's where an eraser can come in useful. Like this poor leaf here is completely grey. And I really don't want completely grey leaves. I do want them with some highlights, light areas on. So they are it's quite a small area, and I tend to, the paper stump I've got is quite a big, thick one. So I think that works-ish. Need some there, some here, some under there. That's okay. For the holly leaves, I am going to pop a shadow underneath that middle vein. I'm going to keep it consistent across all of them, and then just going to blend it in, blend it out, soften it. That look works quite nice. Ooh, mistletoe. I'm going to have shadow at the top of the leaf and going down the edge just a little. All right. Ooh, let's see where I need to go back. Pick them up. And this is perfectly fine to do. So we've got those. All right. These. I'm going to go to these little ones up here before I go back to the Muka. Just at the edge, and I'm trying to put the graphite where not where the black is. And just gently rub it in. I don't want to spread it too far. I just want that sense that there's a shadow along the edge, even of the white bits, and I will enhance that white. And I am also going to pop some graphite around these, just to add that bit of shadow there. I think that would help. And these outside bits, I think there'll be shadow at the bottom. They overlap. I'm not going to try and do the little beads on the top. I have plans for those, which involves gold, I think. Same as the centre of the poinsettias. Again, if the outside of the poinsettias or the bottom of them is a little grey, that will help later on. So that'll work. And that hollyberry needs a bit of shadow there. Okie dokes. The Mukas, I'm going to add shadow where they furl around, just above that furling point, if you can see. And at the moment I'm just using whatever is left on. Tortillon, paper stump. This edge is really, this end is really flared out quite a bit. Don't know why. So let me just pick up a bit more and that'll be alright. And then I am going to go to the base of the stems, and I'm going to add quite a bit of shadow at the base of the stems because they are growing out from underneath something. And I think that then can be spread out quite nicely in whatever direction they need to go. Well, from the bottom up. It just gives that bit of shadow there. There we go. Very quickly done. I think that'll be fine. And where these overlap, don't forget to do shadowing where they overlap as well, Angela. Yeah, I am talking to myself, but there we go. Okay, so that's the Mooka, that's all of that. I've got the arches and the blocks to do. With the blocks, I'm going to keep it pretty simple because I'm going to do where I want shadow to be most apparent. And in some cases, I'm not even going to try to pop any in. I think this one will be fine if I just darken that up. So that'd be quite nice. These areas, these dotty areas do need some graphite where Mookas are over them, or any other design elements. So here, and these things I think can have a little bit of shadow, the bottom and the top. Right, so let's go and blend the graphite out into these areas. Okay, so just the borders to do. With this one is going to be some graphite at the bottom and the top, because the inner bit I've got plans for. So that will just help to give that. With the, I'm going to do the same with the shattuck, just at the tops and the bottoms, and I am just trying to put this just on the white. If it does go, you know, the way I'm going to blend it, it's going to blend over onto the black, but not as heavily as if I drew on the black, to be honest. I think this does need some shadow on this side. I think so. That's a bit more there and a bit there. There has to be some shadow here on all of these arches, and perhaps a bit at the bottom as well. And then there's these ones, so the bottom there, bottom where the holly is, and there, and underneath those. Underneath there would be fab as well, and underneath that holly would be. Okay, so let's just get this lot in. And there we are. I think that is all the shading done. Some of it's a bit heavy-handed. I can fuss about with it forever, I think. Well, you can. It's the nature of it. But I think that will do for now. Now, I know this video is going to be well over an hour long. So what I'll do is I'm going to say thank you for joining me for this. I'll do the adding of colour to this in a separate video. I must probably post it tomorrow. Yes, I know it's Christmas Day, but yeah, art doesn't stop for Christmas. Well, it doesn't in my case. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's given you some ideas. The open space here is very much needed, but I know I'm going to end up bringing a line here with colour, or however I'm going to add the colour. So that's going to be nice and interesting. I am going to spend some time tidying up some of this shading with a fine eraser, the Tombow Mono one that's like almost like a mechanical pencil almost. It's a bit thicker than one, but that will help. So watch out for that. And once again, I'd like to say thank you ever so much for joining me and sticking with me, for subscribing if you have, for leaving likes and comments. It's all very much appreciated. And I wish you all the very best wishes of this season. Once again, for now and every day ahead of you. And I will see you again soon. Thanks for now. Bye-bye.